I feel really lucky that I grew up with one of these things. I have this kind of ambivalent relationship to the piano that, in one sense, it's the thing that's controlled Western music for 300 years. Is the sets of relationships that you have in here, and this is what anybody who's tried to learn, like a guitar player or something who's tried to learn harmony from, it explains really nicely on the piano. It sort of makes some sense, but trying to learn it on, a guitar, like what a third is and what a fifth is and all that kind of stuff is a little bit confusing and counterintuitive. But anyway, I feel really lucky that I grew up with one of these. This is a cool thing. This is kind of like the, for Western pitch systems, this is your dictionary or your encyclopedia. You can find out what, this is what, there's not many instruments you can play a 7-note or an 8-note chord on, and find out how these things work together. So it's really good for organizing lots of things, that's a thing, and one of the cool things in Western music that it does that other musics don't tend to do is to have these large orchestras and these complex interactions between many things, and you kind of need this to be able to do that. Another thing that it allows is that you can change keys a lot with this, which is not really available in other music, so that's kind of gives you this cheat. So that, that's what recommends it as a system is in an efficiency business model way, you can get away with creating less and just dressing it up differently because you can change keys. Example of that is, I kind of like this song, yeah. So, here's the song. Ooh, child, things are gonna get easier. Ooh, child, things will be brighter. Ooh, child, things are gonna get easier. Ooh, things are gonna get brighter. So that's cool, but you've kind of had enough of it already, right? So you'd have to write something else. But instead of doing that, you can just go, someday we'll be walking in the light of the beautiful sun. Someday when the world is much brighter. Someday we'll be walking in the light of the beautiful sun. Someday when the world is much brighter. And then you're kind of used to that one. So, ooh, child, things are gonna get easier. Ooh, things are gonna be brighter. And you can just keep doing that and keep changing keys. So you can take this one little thing and make it into a much bigger thing. From an efficiency perspective, that's great. You're a songwriter, and you have to write like 35 songs a week. Cool, you knocked that one off really quick just by throwing a lot of key changes into it. You didn't have to invent anything, you just like transpose it. And this is a cool thing that way. It allows that, and it allows that kind of, the orchestration thing. There's not any other instrument you could hear what that sounded like. So if you're writing for a big orchestra, that's one of the things you could do with it. Find out the difference between these. And, find out all those colors, and you put those in like strings and trumpets, and you put these in basses, and when you listen to like classical music stations, you'll get a fair amount of filler, and you'll just hear an awful lot of stuff that you can just tell just comes straight from the piano. It'll be like, and you can tell they're just like playing the piano and writing it down, and they just take the left hand and put it for low instruments, and the right hand and put it for high instruments, and there's this kind of question answer back and forth between the two hands. I don't know. I always notice that when I hear it. That's Anyway, a great tool. I'm very glad I grew up with one of these. that's a way to construct music, you know. And it kind of takes the burden off you to create. Like, the thing I really love about raga music is they don't get to do that. You're stuck with whatever that drone is that you're playing in. You're just going to have to keep being interesting in that. And so they do things with, they do all kinds of things within that, and they're going to play for a long time, you know. But they don't get these easy outs. You can't just like kind of, okay, we'll just, you know, bump this up or change the mode within the key or whatever. No, you have to keep like making music that's engaging, and that's harder to do. You know, you don't have, I mean, I don't know that music obviously as well as I know Western music because, you know, I grew up in piano culture. And I'm sure they have their cheats too, you know, like, because everybody's going to have those. So that, you know, that's only natural. Like, you know, you do stuff and you figure out, like, shortcuts and ways around it and things like that. But, you know, once upon a time, these were like TVs 100 and plus years ago and stuff like that. Like, you know, pianos were fairly cheap. Like, you know, I don't think that the poorest people had them, but regular working people had a piano in the house because this was same way, you know, people have TVs or stereos or whatever in their house now. This was like where you got music from, you know, even if you only played like, you know, hymns or, you know, whatever. This was like a very basic thing. And they're sort of endangered now, like they're kind of disappearing. Now you have keyboards, you know. This is very different from a keyboard. Like every piano has its own kind of sound to it. And, you know, this one's a bit out of tune and it's, you know, about a quarter tone flat. You know, it has its personality because it's an individual thing, and I've been banging on it for years, so it has its kind of, you know, what I've ended up putting into it, you know, is now has a sort of flavor to it. But it's you know, I wake up a lot of mornings and don't know what to do with myself, and so here I go, you know, I'll just like play some piano. You know, just because it's a fun thing. So anyway, like when I was growing up, yeah, we had one of these, and so that my dad liked music a lot, listened to it all the time. He couldn't see hardly at all. He could see about this far, and so he had great ears. And he sort of heard his way around the world. He kind of, you know, navigated by autolocation a lot, you know. You know, he wasn't blind enough to need a dog or have a cane or something like that. But Yeah, you really couldn't see in the way we think of as seeing. And he heard the shapes of things, he told me. You know. Anyway, really loved music and listened to it all the time. And knew a lot about it. So one of the fortunate things growing up with him was that he could explain this, you know, and so if there was something to explain, you know, he'd show us on the piano. We'd go, well, you know, there's a minor third, you know, and you know, these notes relate like this, blah blah blah. You know, I don't have to get into the specifics of it. The other lucky thing I had growing up was that I had a little brother who liked to play, you know, at least as much and maybe even more than me, and so we were always playing music, you know. And so, you know, I don't know. I don't know really where I'm going with this, you know. But in a way, I consider this sort of a corrective. You know, I'd be like, you know, in my own work, I'd be in the experimental, avant-garde, etc. kind of world of music, you know, because I do different things. I attempt to be original. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that loses touch with like where it comes from, you know. I think this kind of keeps me rooted a little bit in, you know, I don't know, just thinking about like, and a sort of, there's a rootedness to, you know, I mean, that's my favorite song, God Bless the Child. Them is God shall have, them is not shall lose. So the Bible says, and it still is news. Mama may have, Papa may have, God bless a child that's got its own, that's got its own. And that's a cool thing there, like that uses all 12 of these notes in it. That little part is, you know, it's not serial music or atonal music or whatever you want to call that. But that has kind of a thing in it, you know. That you can't play that on a sitar really, because this has key changes in it. You know, this part here particularly, like the, you know. God bless a child that's got its own. You know, there's a key change there. You know, if, you know, it's sort of the same thing in reverse as that "Ooh Child" thing, except it's done like, you know, right within it. Anyhow, you know, I'm really happy that I have a piano. You know, I went for many years without having one. Unfortunately, what happened to them is they were everywhere. There were just pianos all over the place. And like you said, like any kind of basic family had one, you know. They were cheap and plentiful. And I think what happened to them was during World War II, they melted down all the harps, which are cast iron. There's a 300-pound piece of cast iron that holds all these strings in place. Also, just tangentially, this is an amazing piece of mechanical technology. It took hundreds of years and hundreds of really diligent, intelligent people to make something that works this well. It was, nobody like invented the piano. This was a cumulative, collaborative work that extended over hundreds of years. I think of it kind of as a little bit as well as just a thing that, I don't know, you can do a lot with this, so it's fun for a musician by themselves. There's not really any other instrument that has as much kind of completeness around it as this, because this has all this range. It always sounds like a piano, but aside from that, it's a really great instrument for somebody to play by themselves. But aside from that, to our continuous inventiveness and desire to improve and solve problems, I just think this is belongs in some sort of shrine to humanity as the human spirit going forward and figuring out and solving the next problem and the next problem and the next problem and the next problem. It's I don't know, it's really kind of a cool thing. And so when you think about a piano, you just think yes, this is kind of a yes we can. It's as long ago as about 300 years ago, they came up with, well, it was about 200 years ago, they really came up with more like this. Beethoven was kind of the one who had was in the first generation of real piano players. Bach's music, a lot of people play it on the piano, but he never really saw one. They had earlier versions of this, but they weren't like this. This isn't that much different from what Beethoven had. It has some improvements, but kind of minimal. That one kind of established it, and he really made it speak. I don't really like Beethoven that much, but some of his piano music just, I don't know, gets me. That's my favorite Beethoven. He just wrote some beautiful things for it. Anyhow, this really deserves props as a thing of instrument building and a thing of collaborative, evolving thought leading to something. It's a really cool thing. And I'm glad I grew up with one, because this allowed me to understand music in a way. I would recommend to young musicians is to try to get one of these if you can. I got this one for free. People get rid of them now. They're in the way, they take up space and stuff like that. As opposed to a keyboard, keyboard's second best. I don't actually like them. I've never been able to develop any relationship with an electronic keyboard, because they just don't have, this makes a difference how you hit it, as opposed to, they don't really have that, and they always kind of have this, I don't know, this really has sound, There's a lot of randomness, and you kind of have to learn to play with the whole sound of the instrument, and keyboards don't really do that. Maybe you can't get one and have a keyboard, but if you can have one of these, The other nice thing, you don't have to turn this on. There's no like control. You know, you don't have to go, oh, gee, what kind of settings do I want? You know, do I want, you know, this model or that model? You know, that all distracts you from like this is what you get. What you know, what you hear is what you get. So you have to like sit down and play this instrument, you know, this particular one. It's, and like I said, they're all different. You know, I go to another piano and like play on that, and I'll have to spend a while getting used to it. You know, some of them, like, the action's harder or softer. Some of them are missing notes, and so you have to learn to play around those. Some of them are more out of tune than this, or more precisely in tune than this. So you'll go to play, you know, your favorite chord, you know, and it won't really sound like that. So you'll have to kind of adapt and, you know, and see what you get, you know. Because, you know, the conditions of the felts and the conditions of the damper bar and, you know, all that kind of stuff makes a difference. Every little sensitive thing in it. But if you want to know Western music and how that works, you know, this is kind of where it's at. You know, and you can just fool around, you know. And you're fooling around just with pitches, you know. So yeah, I think the electronics things tend to get you like into this place where it's not about the playing; it's about something else. It's about, you know. That's a general B I have in my bonnet too. Is that, you know, this is pretty immediate. You know, it's not as immediate as playing a flute. You know, I can reach, you know, where it's like your breath and your hands go right into it. This is still mechanical, so you're at this mechanical remove from it. But it's still like, you know, it just sits there and waits for you to make it sound. You don't have to turn it on, you don't have to dial it in, you don't have to, you know, all these things kind of separate you from the experience a little bit. This is just right there. You know? It's like, you know, it's like an amazing drum that can just make 88 different pitch sounds on it, and, you know, as many as like 8 at once, you know. Shit like that to, you know, to less corny shit like that. Anyway, that's my little testament to the piano, because, you know, as much as I build and everything like that, as much as I do other things, and all that has been about getting away from this, you know, because the system is restrictive and it's like blah blah, all that kind of stuff, you know, it's status quo, man. As much as I've spent my, you know, last 16 years of my life like getting away from this, I still hold this in really high esteem. You know, I am not rebelling against that. I am going, you know, in places where this allowed me to think of because this exists, you know. Yeah. play that on a sitar or in a gamelan orchestra, or you know, or whatever. I don't know. I just hate this feeling that experimentalism and avant-gardism is like rebellious in the negative sense. You know, you can rebel in a positive sense where you're adding on top of, you know, what's been done, and you accept it with its faults. Yes, this restricts you. You can't play the note between there and there. You just can't do it. It doesn't exist on here, and there's, you know, a dozen of them, you know, and you're stuck with, if you want a minor third, that's what you got. You know, there's no subtlety, there's no, you're just stuck with it, you know. However, like, you know, for me in my life anyway, this like allowed me to have this basis to build on, and is more fashionable in avant-garde systems to be like rejecting, you know, yeah, like that's kind of all fucked out, like, you know, I'm me and I'm, you know, I like it much better that, you know, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and it took a lot of giants to come up with this particular tool. It's a really cool one. And no matter where I get to, you know, even if, you know, the basis of some piece of music I make is about like scraping metal against metal and like that, to me, in the back of it, there's still kind of the desire to make coherent music that drove people to do really an incredible amount of work to, you know, develop this thing, you know, and this most of all of Western music. This is really unique, and yeah, I don't know. And the strong take more while the weak ones fade. Empty pockets don't ever make the grade. Mama may have, Papa may have, God bless the child that's got its own. That's got its own. So there's my like pay on to the piano and related subjects. So if you're a parent and you think your kid has ears, just have one of these around. You know, it's that's a cool thing. Like you know, it's just there. I remember my little brother, like a little tiny kid in his pajamas, and he's going like, you know, and he looks at me with this expression on his face, and he goes, "I'm playing chords." I didn't even know what a chord was yet. You know, he's kind of more talented than me, and you know, he's like 4 or something like that, and he, you know, boom, because it was there, you know, and it's just like you're a little kid, and here's this thing, you know, and then you figure out like, oh, that sounds like something, you know, and that sounds kind of like more of something. Oh, that's part of this song, you know, that I heard. Oh, I can learn how to play this song, you know, and stuff like that. So you. And so it gives you like this opportunity for discovery. Like if you had to go plug something in and turn it on and put on headphones and all that, there's, just a whole lot more intent in that. It's not, you know, to have this just in your ambient, yeah, your environment. You know, eventually you'll just try out more and more things. You go, oh, that's cool, I like that. You know, what is that doing? Oh, it just really goes from a triad to a seventh. Wow, that's just a simple addition, you know, but it has motion in it. Cool, you know. So, but if you had to like decide to do that and think it up and turn it on and blah, 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 you probably wouldn't do it, you know, you're a little kid, you know. But if you're a little kid and it's just right there to do, you'll just fool around with it because it's there and it's raining outside or whatever, you know. The thing that, another thing I'm really lucky with is my parents were awesome, and they didn't complain no matter how much noise we made, like musical noise, I mean, in a sense. You know, if we were just screaming and yelling, they'd tell us to shut up. But if we were like thinking about music and doing things around that, oh, I can't believe the horrible shit that they had to listen to, you know, as we found our way. You know, my brother and I played all the time, and we played really loud, you know, when we were in high school. And yeah, it must have been terrible, you know, like the kind of thing that gives you a headache, you know. So it does require that from, you know, wherever you have these ones. You know, I even had a hard time sometimes when, you know, friends come over and play shit that annoys me on it, but, you know, that's what it's there for, and, like, you know, the lesson of my folks was that they tolerated all kinds of banging around trying to find your way, but this is a really good way to find your way in Western music. Like, if you want to be a musician, like one who knows the names of stuff, you know, a lot of people don't need this at all, you know, they play very naturally, and, you know, yeah, do great stuff without, like, this isn't a requirement. But if you want to explore deeper and kind of understand what all the music that composers have done over time, you know, if you ever want to understand, like, Debussy or Chopin or Stravinsky or, you know, Bartok or Messiaen, yeah, you kind of got to know what this is all about, you know. And the best way to find out what this is all about is not really to take some class with a teacher who gives you exercises or stuff like that. It's just, you know, check this thing out, you know, here's this thing, you know, like, oh, that sounds shitty, you know, that sounds kind of cool, you know. You know, oh, that's how that one goes, you know. Well, that sounds familiar, you know. And you build up your knowledge piece by the end, but you build it up by discovering and finding stuff instead of somebody telling you how it's done, you know. So, anyway, you know, I'm waving the flag for having pianos around. And like I said, this one was free. There's lots of free ones. You know, they'll have their problems. You know, like I said, this one's a quarter tone out of tune. You know, it will never ever again play in concert pitch. You know, like, but it's still like, even with its defects, and this is awesome. You know, this is, I'm so glad I have this here, you know. It demystifies, like stuff like, Chopin or Satie, or, you know, if you like piano music at all, you know, I particularly like those guys, Debussy, you know, you can see what they did, and you can go, oh, well, duh, you know, he's going like, that makes sense, you know, even if you can't play it, you know, some of that music's hard to do, you know, Beethoven, you see, oh, he uses this scale, you know, it takes a lot of the mystery out of it, and you can say, well, gee, and so instead of being intimidated by Beethoven and going, oh, I could never do that, you can say, oh, yeah, huh, you know, that isn't that hard, you know, I mean, it's hard to play it really beautifully, but, you know, but I can understand what he was doing. Maybe I'll, like, you know, find out a bit of something, and if you like it and it catches you, well, then you'll just, you know, grind it out some more, and end up with a piece of music, you know. And I do think, like, underneath it all, like, yes, a lot of us just want to be able to play something that we've heard, you know, because, yeah, that's what we want to do. Like, we heard this song and we like it and we want to know how to play it. Cool, you know, me with God Bless the Child, you know. But I think, like, inside of, like, we really want to kind of play our own music, you know, most human beings. I think we want to, you know, kind of do our own things. Like, we, you know, we're part of humanity in general, but we're also, you know, we have individualism to us, and you know, here's this thing that kind of can allow us to do that, you know. But it's harder to do, you know. The thing is, here is this chord is actually easier to play than this chord. I don't have a guitar here, but that one's really a bitch to play on a guitar. Like, you need fingers this long to probably reach those, you know. You can't play this on a guitar. And I think that's kind of a cool, useful sound. You sure can't do this. You know, you can't do that on there either. Like, you're kind of, you know, the guitar really forces you to play in the standard chords, playing like, you know, well, like, people who play jazz on the guitar are really exceptional players. Like, it takes years to be that good to play some of those chords, you know. Like, simple, that stuff's all simple on here, you know. And the other thing is, this lets you do two things at once, you know, or one thing and then another. Yeah, cool thing. Anyway, I don't know, I'm just kind of rambling and tangenting along.